I call the routine Board of Public Works meeting for September 27th to order. So let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, roll call. Preston Lee, Richard Nichols, Barbara Curtis are attending in person. Earl Webb is on via phone,
Zoom,
Zoom,
yes.
okay. Ex officio, Andrew Williams, Austin Calaman, our general manager, Robin Davis, and Mike Hoffman, our solicitor, are here. So first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I have a motion.
Move we approve and agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's 5-4. 5 approving. Okay. Receive Inframark report. Jeff?
Mike is also on via Zoom.
Oh, okay. Welcome, Mike.
There he is.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And Mike.
So, you have our report. We had an issue, or we've been having an issue with the crane that we use to remove the membrane cassettes from the process tanks. There's a hand wheel trolley that moves it left to right. So that trolley, it was getting really tight, and we have the membrane, the cassette weighs about 5,000 pounds. So, and we have to take it up as high as we can get it to get it over all the process equipment. So it wasn't ideal. The guys were pulling really hard on this chain and making the load swing. So we had the manufacturer's service representative out the closest one, Crane One, out of Baltimore. And they gave us a proposal, which we forwarded to Austin, and he approved and issued a PO. They were out and changed the bearing and made some modifications. It made things a little better. It didn't correct the situation. So Jeff and I are working with them to make it right, excuse me, to make it right. So we'll continue to do that and give you an update when it's resolved.
Is it, Mike, is it limiting the ability to remove cassettes still? Or has it improved enough that you can still use it?
We can still use it, but it needs to be resolved. I think it is.
Okay, thank you.
PS15. So a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago, we had installed a repair clamp to one of the discharge pipes in the wet well, one of the pump discharge pipes. That didn't hold up. So we got a price from Caswell to replace both pump discharge pipe in the wet well, and which Austin had approved and issued a PO. Jen issued a PO, and we had gotten pricing back in I don't know, February or March to do the replacements. With Caswell, and another contractor. So we had a comparison, and Caswell was much lower. What, it was Sprague, I believe, Jeff.
We had Sprig, Caswell and Breakwater.
So, and do you recall what the amount of the proposal was, Jeff, to replace both pipes and valves?
So, well, I believe when Sprig gave us their proposal, they only wanted to install the clamp that we did. And that came in at a little over 5,000.
No, I mean, the most recent,
The most recent that we got from them was,
Caswell.
I want to say around 10.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to write it down, but we, that's to replace the, well, just discharge piping and valving, for PS15 for both pumps. So, and then we're, hoping to schedule that within the next month.
I spoke with them today and we're looking at, I believe it was around the 16th to the 27th of October. Their vac truck is down right now and they're waiting parts. So
Like everybody else.
I feel like you can relate.
And then on to the digester building, power feed issue that we were having. So, we haven't had that issue for about a month. It hasn't tripped the breaker. The one thing that we did do to, one change we made was we, took the blowers for the digesters out of auto and put them in manual. So they're running all the time rather than, coming on and off. And that seems to have alleviated the issue. Our electrician exhausted efforts. Say we did infrared imaging to try to find loose wires, hotspots in that building, and we have not found anything. After talking to Nickel and BPW's electrical crew was out one day, and our electrician, they don't feel like it's a power cable issue. There's something wrong in the MCC in the digester building. So, and we'll continue to try to figure it out. But right now, we don't have an answer, but everything's functional.
So, Austin, what's the issue of running them in manual means they're running continuously. So putting extra hours on the blowers.
So
Go ahead.
I believe we had them set at five hours on, 1 hour off. And when we switched over, we're just now running it the full 6 hours. So we'd be putting an extra 4 hours a day on. So,
And it really, when they settle out and we turn the blowers back on, it causes some motor issues. So it's actually alleviates some of that issue by not running them in intervals. So that is a positive anyway.
And you've not tried putting them back in order to see if the problem still exists, or?
we have not.
We were happy not to have the problem, but no, we know it needs to be, we need to find the issue, and we will continue to try to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just a curiosity question. So you guys have an electrician, right? A lead maintenance electrician and
Yeah.
a lead maintenance technician. Do they do the work, or is it the other electrical firm that's coming in and doing all the work?
No, we have an electrician, a master electrician that does anything, that, capable. He's qualified to do, whatever tools we have. And, no, we brought in Nickel, and that was, Austin's recommendation that BPW works with Nickel because they had this monitoring equipment. And after discussing with several individuals, that seemed to be the next step. So, it it didn't really help us out. The second time they came out and installed, which they did, we paid for one visit, but they came out a second time as a courtesy, and it did trip during that monitoring, but it didn't catch it. So it tests every 3 seconds. So it didn't see the amp, increase gradually, the amp draw increased gradually. So whatever happened within 3 seconds, and the monitor missed it.
Okay, thank you.
Along that same line, last month you mentioned that your electrician was leaving. Has he left yet, and have you hired someone new? Because I saw the same name on the report.
He's still with us currently, but Mike and I interviewed 5 applicants this week. So
Okay,
once we make a decision on that, he's gonna stay on for about a week, and then he's gonna be out.
thank you.
Does the lead maintenance electrician have a license in Delaware for working with electricity?
Yes,
Okay, because I was looking at the thing and it said NA, so I wasn't sure.
he's a master electrician in the state of Delaware.
Okay. The Delaware certifications had NA on Andrew's name.
Yeah, that's for wastewater. It was meant to be for wastewater certifications. I'll clear that up on the report.
Okay, no problem. I'm just happy he's got it, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I believe Earl asked about the I&I last month, and I said I'd get back to him. So I did the point watch system. I think just for everybody's knowledge, the point watch system is the little they're auto dialer alarm systems, but they also track different things. So we can track pump run times, and then it has a calculation based on the pump capacity. It calculates a volume. So we can track, an estimated volume which each pump station's pumping. So, and then I trended that against rainfall, and picked out what appeared to be the most the pump stations that were most influenced by rainfall. It's a little bit difficult because some of the pump stations pump into other pump stations, but basically I listed what the ones closest to the water have the highest rate of inflow and infiltration. Pump station 1 has actually been giving us some problems lately, and Jeff had our guys out, and I think Emmett was out with the BPW staff to look at an issue at pump station 1, which is out at the University of Delaware. They can see water coming in the pump station, clear water, and it hasn't been identified where it's coming from. But through this last rain event last weekend, we had high levels. Both pumps were pumping constantly. I think they're still pumping. So it's an issue that we got to keep looking to address. And I don't know if it's just if University of Delaware has a storm flow that's going into our collection system there, but it's become an issue, and we'll continue to work with BPW to try to identify what's going on there.
That is helpful. Thank you. Austin, when we look at, different pipes that we need to remove and take out and those kind of things, and given potential cost increases we could have with I&I as it relates to potentially going with the county, is that something that gets dialed into the plan on what roads we go out and look after?
It does, but in this case, this is a piece of pipe that extends into the University of Delaware campus.
Yeah, I got that. I got that completely. But I mean, in general, with some of the other piping that we have, is that something that goes into the prioritization?
Yeah, and I think when you look at this, pump station 1 and pump station 2 are in sync with pump station 3, right? Going down Politown Road.
Yes.
So if you see I coming from pump station 1, in theory, pump station 1's pumping to 2,
Two,
which
it's
then
going to
2
three.
Yeah,
all high flow up until you get to probably the biggest wet well, which would be 3.
Yes.
And then wet well are 3 pumps to 4. And then 5 and 6 are California and
Connecticut.
Connecticut. So that's going to be on that side. So yes, because Cedar is one of those projects that are up there.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. There, any questions, on anything else in our report?
We continue to carry the item about no spare pumps for the smaller pump stations. Austin, can you bring us up to date on where we're at on that?
Well, right now, we have pumps that aren't necessarily interchangeable per each pump station. We have had the conversation as we do the evaluation, which is in my general manager's report. We're working with the University of Delaware through an initiative through FEMA and through DEMA to evaluate pump stations within the floodplain. A part of that is to look at all the pumps associated with each one and look and see if we move towards, one manufacturer, whether that be Flight, that be Gorman-Rupp, Grundfos, whatever it may be. So it's there. It's just we have to make a commitment in what direction we want to go. If we want to go Flights, if we want to go Gorman-Rupp, and then it's a matter of retrofitting, because I believe we talked about actually switching the pumps out at 15, but at 15, because of the guide rail system that was there, we stayed with what we had because of the retrofit, if I'm not mistaken.
That was 16, Austin, but you're correct, yeah.
And I'm sorry. Good. The last time I had was the electrical panel, the measuring, and it's in progress. I mean, I know you've done some of it. Is there any update on MCC and cable measuring?
Well,
So-
we did the treatment plan. But we haven't gotten all the pump stations done.
But correct me, I thought what you did in the treatment plant was just the cables. Wasn't there a plan to measure the MCCs themselves?
We only did the main cables coming in, correct?
And is there a plan to do the MCCs?
We can develop a plan for that. I'm not that familiar with testing that equipment. We'll do some research on it and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
This isn't really a question for you, it's for Inframark, it's more for us, I guess, but the headworks, where do we stand with that? Where is that?
So the biggest issue is that we have supply chain. So that's essentially what we're set up. We had a pre-con meeting. I think they were looking into whether or not they could get the equipment from JWC faster, which would be the compactor. If they could get the compactor faster, they thought about bringing the compactor in, doing that work and then leaving. If not, they were going to gather all their materials and they were shooting for March, April.
I believe April's
For
the last
being
I
on
heard.
site and then working, obviously. And when we originally, I should put it this way. It was really bad for lead times. It got better. And then after everything was done, it ended up sneaking out a couple more weeks. So it was worse, got better, and then kind of went back to the worst standpoint with its lead times.
I believe the last I heard, the biggest holdup was the Pistogrid system.
Yeah, anything from, I forget what
Smith and Loveless.
yes. Anything from Smith and Wesson.
Is that right?
JWC, I think, was pretty good with their equipment. And Alivo, I don't think they were too bad.
I
Because they
think-
were the rebuilds for the screens.
Yeah, I think Smith and Loveless was the biggest hangup. And they were the ones that had it pushed back till about April.
Are we getting the things we can get? Or do we have a schedule for all the pieces of equipment? So
Yeah,
that,
I believe that they came back with a schedule and it was systematically, we were gonna wait and see if the JWC came in quick.
Mhm.
Then we would
Okay.
we would talk about having them come in do the compactor, because that eliminates the need for
The dumpster.
the
dumpster
or
out
the
there.
temporary
Yeah.
dumpster, screening dumpster.
yeah, we keep the pressure on because that's really, that's the biggest problem we've had. It's been a red thing for years.
It says in your report, Q3 2024, is that based on all those delays? That's still where you're shooting for?
They believe that they can work through the summertime on what they need to do. Obviously you have the 2 mm screen, the 5 mm screen, the piston grid system, and the compactor along with the HVAC and electrical upgrades.
Yes.
And I believe they're gonna work, once they come on site in April, they're working until they're done.
Okay.
That date was substantial completion, I believe, was from the pre-con meeting, so should be done before that, but that's why I put that date in the report.
All right, thank you. At yesterday's mitigation meeting, the question came up about sealed manholes in the flood-prone areas. We have a policy, I think, that everything in the flood zone areas would either have the salad bowl in it or a
Yep.
sealed top. It wasn't clear whether that's the case. Is it?
I believe that almost every manhole has a salad bowl in it. Sealed manholes, I don't think we've gotten there yet, but we at least have salad bowls.
I mean, going forward, that's where we should be hitting.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I think it'd be good if we could verify that. If we have suspected ones, because like the storm we had over the weekend, a lot of water would go in a manhole that's doesn't have some type of waterproofing in it. So
I think the biggest thing, and we've already done this, is the actual I'm trying to think. It's not the lid, but I guess it would be the lid for the wet wells. Remember, we were working with breakwater because of
Yes.
the broken hinge, but
Mhm.
also that would put a brand new
like
cover on.
California.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think those are one of your biggest areas. for-
Down
Right,
on
that's-
that one, I believe we checked it over the rain event, and at one point we had roughly about 8 inches of water ponded on top of that lift station.
Even a moderate rain, it puddles there. That's
It gets fairly deep. The problem would be if we were to lose the lift station, in order to open it, all that water would go in.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, at one point, we were probably about 6 to 8 inches at least over top
I've
of that.
seen it.
Yeah.
I've driven up there after a rain. It's you can't stay on cedar. You got to go off to the edge. So, all right. Thank you.
I have a few questions. First of all, what's a salad bowl?
Exactly what it looks like.
It looks like a salad bowl, and you take the lid off of the top off of the manhole cover, and it fits right in there. So any water that gets around the rim sits in that bowl, and it does have some releases in there for like high pressure or something.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's just a plastic bowl that sits inside the rim.
The idea is that it evaporates from there,
No,
or
it just
how does it
sits
get
there and
out?
runs off someplace else.
Well, it's got a soft seal
Uh-huh.
so that it fits into the flange area. And it's an internal cover, basically.
Thank you. That was my first question.
I don't recommend eating salad out of it.
No, not for dinner anyway. Okay, in your maintenance, repair and activities, it was noted that replace the junction box in the wet well for PS5.
Yes.
And that was also noted in last month's report. Did it fail, or did it start in July and get finished in August?
I
or-
believe that was, I believe that got started at one point and finished. It was kind of in the in-between.
Okay, second question was, in your work orders, the monthly chemical processing and storage inspection, it noted that the base of the containment was eroded and leaking in both chemical room and xenon building, but I didn't see whether that's been repaired. Is that continuing to leak?
We had GMB come out and look at that, and they were working on assessing the situation. So we have around the caustic, the concrete has started to get eaten away.
Mhm.
So I did inform, I believe it was Russ that came out and looked at that. and he was gonna let me know.
We also did it in the quarterly walkthrough with GMB, and it was noted on their report.
And we're doing another walkthrough with GMB
October 6th.
12th, 16th. So
Like to,
we do quarterly walkthroughs with GMB to look at the condition of the plant.
could I join that? May I join that? Yes,
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
on the
May
16th.
16th.
I'll send you an
October
invite.
16th. Okay. Thank you. That was all I had. Oh, and congratulations on still no lost time accident.
Thank you.
All right, anything else for our Inframark? Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Item 5, President's Report. So, first thing I want to note is that, we weathered this storm Ophelia. We had 2 or 3 minor outages, which were basically pole top transformers, but the BPW system stayed up. And I think there's a lot of commendation that should go to the staff and the crews for maintaining the system so that we can weather these type of storms. We did have 65-mile-an-hour gusts on Lewes Beach, and we had upwards of 3 inches of rain. So the fact that the system rode through it when many of the surrounding areas did have outages is speaks well for what the BPW staff and crews have done.
Luckily, I drove around shortly after that. I didn't see much damage. I didn't see many branches down. I thought with 60-mile-an-hour winds, we would see a lot other than leaves in the gutter. I didn't see much of anything. I mean, I have small branches around it. Nothing disastrous.
No, and it's funny because I had Bartlett at the house this morning, and they were removing trees in Rehoboth and in the county side.
We must
So-
have better trees.
Or better luck, so, yeah, and some of this is the luck of the draw.
Dr. Hecker did want me to pass along to the team how great of a job they did with the electrical outlet that happened, or actual electrical issue that happened over on Debris Circle. Very, very well done and very quickly attended to. So he wanted me to send that along.
We had a meeting with the county on the wastewater treatment plant in August. We've worked up some bullet points for further discussions. There's no major progress, but things are moving ahead. We've met with BB Hospital twice for the upcoming power outage. To make sure that BB is prepared, and it's been attended by DP&L, BPW, Sussex County Emergency, and the entire BB staff. And it looks like they've done a good job at preparations. We have a couple of items we have to get to them, but we are down to just the 1 outage instead of the 3. So, Hazardous Waste Take Back Day is coming up. It's October 28th. We encourage everyone to bring hazardous waste. There'll be Drug Take Back Day at the same time from the Lewes Police Department. And, this has always been a good event in the past. And the more chemicals and hazardous waste we can get out of the garbage stream, the better we all are. And I think that's all I had. I think Austin's going to cover the rest of it.
Okay, so the couple of the big things, obviously the outage, the update on the outage is that there will only be 1 outage. It will take the entirety of the 4 hours based off what DP&L is letting us know. It's gonna take place on October 5th from 12 to 4. We'll have staff from every department in here, just in case something happens. We have hydrant flushing on the 12th and 13th of this month. Staff is working heavily with legal counsel for these water CPCN applications. It is not an easy task. There's a lot of time and energy spent on them, so we're working on submitting those probably next month. Robin and I and Eric attended the Tricon conference. I gave you guys my notes from that. It's pretty extensive. A lot of it dealt with lead and copper, PFAS, a lot what's coming down on EPA. Very interesting to see how each community is doing and handling lead and copper and PFAS. Biggest challenge ahead of us, I think, is going to be the funding piece, because there's a lot of regulation coming down at one time. You know, I believe what was DC Waters, it was 1.5 billion was their lead and copper program. Just to put it in retrospect, a lot larger than us, but and all of that is to be done by essentially the utility company going inside the home up until the first curb stop or valve, or the first valve or 2 feet into the foundation. So a lot of unknown, but we're working towards trying to get clarification there.
I think just one thing on the PFAS, I think it's important to point out that we've been proactively in advance of this for the last 2 years, been testing for PFAS. So
we did voluntary testing with DENREC in 2021 at one of our wells. We got all the results back. We were within the standard then. Theoretically, if you look at what they're anticipating the change to be, it's still within it. I believe they're moving from 70 parts per trillion to 4 parts per trillion. That's what the recommendation is. I don't believe it was voted on yet, but it's anticipated that it's going to be accepted. And then we also have, I think it's UCMR5, which is the unregulated chemicals or organic materials that we have to test for. That is biannually. We have to do that in February and in August, I believe. So the EPA sends all this stuff to us. We do the testing. We have to take it to a regulatory lab. Gets done, and that's just as part of the EPA program.
Austin, the UCMR5, you say in your notes it applies to places that have more than 3,300 residents. Is that residents or connections?
Well, that's the interesting part. It depends on who you go with. So the federal government, if you look at local government, we look at more of the connections, but when you look at the federal government, they look at transient population as well. So it's been very interesting to see how it's played out. But needless to say, we're going to participate. We've already signed up. We had to acknowledge it. I believe 4 of us are signed up as people that can be in the system itself. So a lot coming down the pike. It was a great conference. A lot of discussion. Stormwater was a big discussion as well. We're also working on the possibility of some lease options for our bucket trucks and derrick diggers. Just so you know, so you can just have in the back of your mind, the All-Tech unit that we got 2 years ago was about 190,000, maybe about 200,000. The next one that's anticipated to come, which was ordered 24 months ago, is going to be 260,000. The one after that is looking to be about 300, and then we just got a price on another one, and it's exactly the same spec as the one that we're getting at 260. And when we get delivery 30 months from the day it's ordered, it's looking like it's going to be 360,000. Just so you guys can understand, and it's not just them. So we looked at All-Tech too as another option. So as these vehicles start to get more and more expensive, one of the things that we've looked at is we have the ability to, depending on what the market conditions look like, to do a lease option where you do biannual payments or annual payments in lieu of, chunk it out $300,000, $400,000 worth of cash. So we're looking at that. We've not done it in the past. So we'll probably discuss it next board meeting.
Is the reason that is part of the reason of the price increased sophistication, technology, bells and whistles?
I think it's the cost of metal, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Iron, steel.
Well, the other thing I've seen in the industry is that part of it's due to increased demand because of the amount of trucks that have been destroyed over in wildfires, in hurricanes, and people hadn't been replacing them. And so there's an increased demand. And that's what I've been seeing in the industry press.
And to hit on that, two other things. One is, and I think we updated you guys on it, is we've been working with the UD on the submission of a grant to look at pump stations within the floodplain. And so we submitted all that. They came back and they asked for additional information. It wasn't that great. We supplied that, and while we were at the Tri-Con conference, we got an email that said that FEMA temporarily suspended all funding. I think it was a very large portion of that was because of the Maui wildfires and also the hurricane. Obviously, with the government shutdown as well, it's just going to be a little bit longer. It's not saying that the money's not going to be there. It's just saying that it's paused for the time being.
But isn't their budget exhausted or almost exhausted at this point?
That's why, and when we got the email, there wasn't a lot of detail to it. It just was just letting you guys know if you submitted an application, it's just sitting on pause. I don't think they were accepting any new applications. Yeah.
Wow.
So then to go along with that, Barbara, myself, Robin, and the press met with the EPA, who we got in contact with at the Tri-Con conference, and they perform a risk and resiliency assessment where they'll come into an organization and they'll have a discussion, and ultimately they utilize a lot of their tools and a lot of their assets to come up with solutions based on drinking water, stormwater, or wastewater. So we had an initial conversation with them. We kind of expressed what Lewes was and everything that goes on in Lewes and some of the challenges that we face, our wastewater treatment plant, the discussion of above ground and underground utilities. They seemed very interested based off our conversation. They circulated some examples of what they did. I believe it was Cambridge and Chesapeake Beach. And we have given them our letter of interest. And so we're waiting to hear back from them to see what they'll come up with. They talked, they usually do individual communities and they focus on one utility. When we explained our situation, they thought that we were very unique and they've done these unique projects in the past. They also said that you can team up with other municipalities and do more of a regional holistic approach. So we're going to wait and see what they come back with and kind of go from there.
We discussed this at the mitigation committee yesterday. And we would like to take that on.
Yeah.
As the support that's needed
Mhm.
for that. So as that progresses, we'll be busy, hopefully, working on that. The examples that they sent us, the EPA lingo and the lack of detail surprised me. I mean, I couldn't follow. I would like to see the work that went into those numbers because they were just thrown out.
I think
in that report.
I think they gave you the very high level because I believe when we were in the meeting, they had said, if you want the full report, you have to reach out or get consent from the actual municipality.
They gave us two. They gave us the high level and then the one from Manasquan or something. And I had the same problem with the Manasquan report. It was pretty much unintelligible without some introduction.
Well, we luckily have Sumner as our
It was
magic decoder.
He was interpreting for us.
Oh.
EPA. But it's exciting.
Yeah. So we'll see how that pans out. Sharon, anything on?
Next week is Public Power Week. I don't know if anybody's seen the billboard with George on Savannah. He's very proud of it, so I highly recommend you ride
Oh,
that.
good.
Other than that, that's all I got.
At Savannah Road at the school. So
Nope, if you keep going, like you're headed towards Route 1, it's gonna be on the left after you pass the intersection where the CVS is.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Kim?
I don't have too much to go over for our financials for August. Overall, our revenues are higher than budget. Our expenses are lower than budget. So that's a great bottom line that we have. Our other revenues, we did have the tower rental income and our grant revenue. We had the canal crossing and water tank projects paid out more than what was budgeted. And we did lose $61,000 on change in market value. You guys have any questions for August? For our
So
year,
as it relates to Dawn, I assume you guys have been working with her at a preliminary basis anyway?
yep.
Yep, Kim is working hard.
All right. I know we all look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Yep.
For our year to date, it's the same story that our revenues are higher, our expenses are lower. Our bottom line is healthier than budgeted. I highlighted all of the utility sales because I'll be doing adjustments for them next month or with second quarter numbers. And with the negative, market value from August, our year to date is negative again. It was positive. But overall, we are positive on the investments for the year with our income and fees and the adjustments.
Any questions? All right. So then we move on to new business. Open forum discussion for Highland Acres for a forbearance agreement. Austin and Mike.
I think at a high level, at the last board meeting, we brought 49 Sussex Drive related to the forbearance agreement. And we talked amongst the board and one of the items was whether or not we look at this holistically like Savannah Place as a special project that would fall under our existing policy. And I believe all we're doing today is having a form forbearance agreement that would apply to Savannah Place as a whole, or Highland Acres as a whole.
Yeah, technically what you're doing is you're approving this as a qualifying special project. So the policies include a standard forbearance agreement. And in order for these homeowners to take advantage of that forbearance agreement option, the board has to designate the project as a qualifying special project. So the question on the table for the board would be, and the motion would be to approve the prior Highland Acres utility project as a qualifying special project under section 3.9. That's the ask, that's the question. Just the one other point with context. This was discussed last month in the context of a single homeowner's request for a forbearance agreement. And the board had asked this be placed on this agenda this month, so that you don't have to handle each forbearance agreement individually for anybody who wants to come forward. If you designated it a special project, then it's available to those homeowners in that community who want to take advantage of it.
Any questions?
No. Make a motion to accept the special project designation.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 5-0. Open forum, general discussion on stormwater management. Presley, Tom Panetta, and Austin. So let me just start this out with, we're gonna have much more detailed discussions in the future on this. But given the fact that with climate change and the increased density with built lots in the city and ponding and flooding issues, we want to look at this from a holistic perspective. So we know there are several people individually who have come to us and asked for their specific areas to be looked at. None of the areas that have been brought to us so far are either under BPW easements or are on city or BPW property. So we want to look at it holistically on how to best handle this across the board. And I think, Press, anything you want to add?
No, that's, I think some discussions of what options would be available. We discussed last time, I think. I don't know if we should take that, what we're gonna do with that. We're gonna move forward now with suggestions on this and
Well, we're gonna have
the workshop.
a workshop or a special meeting, because I think we need more data. We need clarity on property ownership and to move forward. I don't think I personally don't think we're ready at this point in time.
Right.
But I just want to assure the public that, we do understand that there is an issue and that we need to look at it holistically. We can't just go to one individual property at this point.
On the topic of stormwater, it's not really an agenda item, but I was walking today on the trail past Donovan Smith, and there was a big pipe that was discharging a rather fast flow of water to the Ebenezer branch. And I wondered whether that was something we knew about.
It's the dewatering for Donovan Smith. Approved through DENREC, I believe.
Yeah, and
They're the well points that are they running full time now?
Yeah.
How long will they be in? For months, I assume.
I think until they get back where they're at. I think their goal was to get towards the back of the development, because that's gonna be the shallow. That right now, like the existing manhole on at Savannah, I mean, not at Savannah, at Donovan's Road and Central was, I believe, like 14 feet deep. So that was your
Yeah.
benchmark. So they were working from there back. So I think their goal was to, because I don't think they needed dewatering on Cooper Circle side. So I think their goal was to, as they get closer in the development, they'll reach a point where they won't be fighting as much water and wouldn't need it.
Of course, with these wet conditions we're having right now, it's
and this isn't the first time we did ordering when we did the Donovan Road portion, if I remember. And I think there might have even been a second occasion. But yeah, I mean, it's temporary, and that's why
Wanted to make sure it was authorized.
it's not a broken pipe.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
So-
the answer is that workshop, do we know about when or what's the
we have to
planning?
wait for Austin and dates when we will have the data together.
It probably, it depends on how much you want to look at one time. If you want to have like an initial meeting, it may be good to look at a November workshop, since you don't have a meeting in November. You'll usually have a combined meeting in December, which would be kind of like your November, December meeting. But we can kind of adjust accordingly.
Well, we know, as you mentioned, 3 or 4 properties that are in discussion. But I think we should request more input from others. There's probably a lot of others that are in the same condition. So.
Well, and I think that it might be helpful.
Just to get input,
I think, you'll have the workshop, so anybody who brings those can have an opportunity to bring it there. But I thought there was a question as to, is GMB looking at anything?
Oh, so there is one project that we're actively looking at, which is Schoolhouse Lane.
Well,
Or-
yeah, but no, I thought that they were going to look holistically in terms of, so the question that I think was raised during the most recent, the joint meeting with the city and the BPW pertained to the question of whether there's arteries or specific air, where was water run through the city? And so GMB, I believe there was a question there as to whether they were going to take a look at the city and see
And that,
how drainage, that would be helpful to have when you go into that workshop, so you can take a picture of the city and say, where does the water run? And you can have that discussion.
and that's exactly what I was alluding to, the fact that, yes, GMB is looking at that. The staff is looking at our infrastructure. We've got to get all that together before we can even make.
so the GMB specifically been asked to do that at this point.
Anne Marie, you want to say
Well,
something?
so I did want to add, you mentioned school lanes, so GMB is actively working on that. But the other thing is that GMB over the past several months has been working on behalf of the board and the city on a beachside stormwater analysis, and that is just about done. So there should be something to share with the city and the board, I think, in the next month. So that would be, I think, helpful for that purpose
But
as
we're
well.
looking for the entire town, you know,
Right,
the town side too.
right.
Yeah.
So, but
But
that's gonna be
have they actually been assigned to do that at this
to
point?
do beyond those
Yes.
two areas.
To identify where the water flows through the,
I don't,
the town.
not,
I mean, it should
not,
be, should be
on our-
easy to put together. I mean,
I just can't remember if it was, if we talked about that at the meeting itself, and because Charlie, it was when Charlie was given the capital projects.
Yeah, it's worth a follow-up prior to the workshop, so that, you know, at the workshop, if you had that preliminary look, high level, then that can be the source of kind of next steps. But that might be something to target if Austin, you wanted to follow up on that.
So, moving on. Open forum, general discussion on the 22-23 fiscal year audit report. Kim and Austin.
Nothing changed financially. There was a couple of changes in notes. On note 11 for purchase power, we added that the 2% for DMAC is after netting, not total power purchase.
You did.
Or what did I say?
You
DMAC?
went turbine.
And then there was a typo that it should have been on instead of of. That were the only changes since it was presented to you.
Any questions on the updated audit report?
I just want to make a mention on your electronic agenda. The link to the forbearance agreement actually takes you to the audit report. The audit report also takes you to the audit report.
Saw it.
That's transparency.
yeah.
The audit report is very, very important.
A requirement to post it twice on your agenda.
Just since you raised it, Mayor, just to be clear, the link is supposed to take you to the form forbearance agreement, which is in the policies. So
Correct.
it's more important you see the audit report.
Exactly.
Open
You
forum,
need-
So
oh,
make a motion that we accept the audit report.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Richard.
Welcome.
Okay. Open forum, general discussion on water tower logos. So we've had several submitted, and at this point, I'll turn it over to Austin.
So we did have several submitted into both myself and through the link and the website. I believe all those have been provided to you. We did have the meeting with the Cape School District, the superintendent, and I believe the director of operations had stopped in. We had the discussion about kind of, you know, what they did at the Route 24 water tower, which was with Tidewater. They basically just circled back with us, said they were very, very interested, and that they would provide two options when it came to the logo itself. I think the idea would be that the logo would be faced, their logo would be faced more towards kind of the school and the football field, with our logo, with the BPW and city crest, whatever it may be, pointed out towards Kings Highway as you're coming into Lewes on Kings Highway.
Could I make a suggestion that the school or somebody look at the sight line from the school to the elevation of the tower over the trees? It looks pretty dicey to me. And before they spend too much effort on thinking of a clever logo or whatever, it should be recognized what they actually can see of the tower from the school side.
And we can work with whoever actually does the designing of the logos. Should you move in that direction, should you vote to have the school as being on one side or whatever you have, you can do it so that you can have eye level kind of shots from, you know, different points coming into Lewes, different points at the school district. Robin and I went out there today. I think based off where the tower is going to go, I think it's going to be well above that tree line. When you talk about the existing tower, the water's at like 100 something feet. I can't remember the exact size of the water tower itself, but I think it's going to be pretty tall. But we can confirm. We can take a look at that.
Was it from what I looked at the GMB plan map, I couldn't discern what the top of the the tower would be. But
There's a section of trees that goes up real quick.
yeah,
And I think it's
and that's
before
where
that.
I believe the tower is going to be hiding behind or rising behind, that it would be helpful to do a sight line and know what that height is.
So you're gonna have GMB do that? Or do you want to do it?
Well, the thing is that you'll probably have a designer come up with a logo which will be proportional to the tank. We had that done on the last tower and it was part of the contract. And then they came back with the actual graphic design and I think the board did a one-off on it.
Well, I guess the point is, if no one can see it, is it worth spending the time and effort on it?
Well, all we have to do is see how tall the tower is going to be and compare it to
Yeah.
the high spot. I
Right.
mean, the survey's already done on the
That's all
plot.
you're
Yeah.
asking us, is a sight line
Yeah.
between
Yeah,
being on a grade.
The
that's
sight
high school.
line coming in from Kings Highway is easy. It's you see everything with a
Yeah.
tower. But from the high school, there is the tree line at what, to my guesstimation, is the highest point of the trees. And a distance away from the tree, the high trees. So it just increases the sight line difficulty.
It's a relatively easy thing to set up.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Just get a
Yes.
sight above it.
Yeah.
I can't place where the tree line starts, and it's a good point.
I guess we're looking at feedback on where you would like to go as far as the design. Meaning, do you want the Capes logo on there? Do you not want the Capes logo on?
So Austin, you had mentioned the approximate cost would be for,
We did not get approximate cost. We remember that was what GMB said, is that once you actually have a design, then you can kind of get a cost. I'm not sure if the school district was involved with the cost of the one for Tidewater, because I believe there was an easement involved from the school district there. I did mention that one of the things that was brought up was, would the school district be willing to pay for their portion of the logo? Obviously, they would prefer not to, but they said they would take it back to the board based off whatever their board, the school board, based off where the conversation went and where we thought the cost was going to be. But they were very interested, and that's why they kind of provided the two logos. They didn't have a feeling one way or another. I think on the Tidewater, they did Cape School District.
Correct.
They just didn't do the Cape logo itself.
I
sounds
did
like,
receive some calls on it and I did get about 5 people call in and say that they would like to move forward, see it with the Cape School District on there. And I got one without. They would just like to see Lewes and BPW.
And you also had some that there was actual design components. One,
Yes.
I believe, requested bicycles.
Yep.
And I forget what.
Cold calls?
Oh, yes.
I'm in favor of the Cape logo. I am. But I think understanding the cost of that and how that gets paid for, I think is something that would need to be ferreted out.
yeah, and I would agree with Earl with Richard's concerns that if it can't be seen, it seems
Yeah, I mean,
pointless.
I have no objection to the Cape having their logo. If they're going to participate at least in the cost, great. But before going too far into let's do the logo and report, somebody should make sure that it really can be seen. And the top of the tank would still be the same regardless of whether it's the 1,000,000 gallon or the 750. Okay,
It may be a little bit taller, the stem may be a little bit taller.
at any rate, that's the issue to me. There's no effort spent in design what they want.
Right.
If they can't see it.
And you also have to think that the entrance, you're gonna have some of those trees that are in there, which a lot of them are dead. But some of those trees have to be removed for access in there as well. So there is gonna be a slot for where, when you turn off a Wellfield lane to get in, because there's actually two entrances. One, there's an easement off of Kings Highway, which runs the tree line all the way down to that parcel, as well as the thought is that there would be another entrance, which would be off of Wellfield Lane through the Wellfield property onto the water tower property.
But the Kings Highway is not gonna be developed. As far as we know.
You
It's-
mean we
it's
talking
gonna-
about the entrance?
The easement's gonna be there, but we're not gonna put the road in.
The way we are moving forward with the design is that we are putting a gate on that side for access, should we need access. And we're putting a gate on the front side, which is on the Wellfield side for access.
The gate, where would you put the gate? You mean on Kings Highway?
There on King, so think of it as a quadrant.
Yeah.
So the piece that faces Wellfield Lane, that's gonna be the main entrance with a gate.
Right.
And then we're putting a gate on the other side. There's the actual easement entrance.
But the easement is when we planned this, I don't think that was gonna be put in. That's because we needed to have an easement to get to the highway.
Right, but there's
Well,
still
we
gonna be a
weren't going-
fence, there's still gonna be a fence around the water tower.
Yeah.
And all he's saying is that where that easement
Oh,
hits the
okay,
water
not at the
tower
road.
fence,
No,
Okay.
no.
I was-
not all the way back.
Thank you.
So
If we had Cape, I wish they would annex into the city. Maybe tell them we'll pay for the printing of the annex.
All right, so,
Could you take that, Mayor?
I mean, they don't pay taxes, so I don't know what the benefit.
I don't know. Well, we could annex some Wellfield in there.
Yeah.
that's the real advantage.
That's a real advantage.
So is the consensus that you would like staff to go back and try and get a sight line of where the water tower will sit after install adjacent to the tree or in coordination with the tree line? And then also, do you feel as if we should go back to Cape and say, looks like there's interest if the Cape was willing to pay for their side of the logo?
Yes.
I think just open discussions, I think the sight line is the most critical one.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to the Cape, I don't think it'd be worthwhile if they can't see it, so.
We wouldn't need a vote for us to approach the Cape and just ask if they're interested, should they have to pay for their logo? We come back next month and then codify everything.
Okay.
I got my marginal.
Okay. Now on to the cross connection control plan. Robin,
I don't have any, I don't have any actual documents to review. I just wanted to put this on there to give you kind of a brief update on what's going on the status. I'm still working on the proposed revisions that were requested by some of the members to the language. Plus, there's also definitions in there, I think that Barbara had asked to be put in on there, that which the reference, some of the wording is referenced in the body of it, but we don't have definitions. So I'm working on that. In part of that, I've been working with Bill from Rural Water and from Jerry from Hodge Corp on these revisions. if there is still any comments, there's a little bit of time to put them in there, because what I'd like to do is get all the comments together, revise the draft, and get it to the board at the October meeting for hopefully review and approval. Because we're at a drop dead date of February.
If we could see the final draft
Correct. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Soon, if
before the meeting. so-
Yeah, correct. Yeah, as soon as I can, if we don't think in maybe a week, if nobody has any more comments, I should be able to, I've got most of it done now. I'm just holding up for if there's any more comments. If not, I can present that to you as soon as possible.
And we discussed this yesterday at the mitigation committee meeting too, and the issue has come up. I mean, we can't do anything about it. We haven't figured out how to do it, at least. The anti-siphon systems that you're supposed to put on systems that have like if you have an irrigation system tied into the house, or your pool system is tied into it, you're supposed to have an anti-siphon system on there that won't allow backflow if there's low pressure on the generation side. And the problem that I'm concerned about is in the areas that flood and in the future when sea level rise, if it floods over that air break, what keeps it from going back the other way, making it a problem? What if the pressure's off on the production side and you have an air break there, you can get the flood water back into contaminated water back into the system that way.
If the valve is open.
Well, yeah, the valve would typically.
No, because the air brake is on the no pressure side. So if the valve is closed, you don't get it. It's the cases where people leave the valve open and
Yes.
the hose and shut the pressure off at the end of the hose.
Right.
Yeah.
Or in
So,
the winter,
If
a lot
no
of
one-
us leave our,
Robin's checked with others in other communities, and you see them down south all the time exposed. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but the mitigation, I thought the mitigation committee should be aware of that. But we don't seem to have any way to address it.
Yeah, we can, if the board or the mitigation team wants to recommend something to the board, normally what it is devices have to be for the irrigation.
Yeah.
The devices for the irrigations have to be, I think the manufacturer spec says 12 inches above the point of the highest point of a head, say an irrigation head. We always have the options of requiring more. My suggestion is not to put it in this document, is just to put in the document to say, you must put it in as in required by our specifications and our policies. Then in the policies specifications, put that in there if you want to alter what the manufacturer says. But as Press said, at this point, I've looked in places in Florida. New York had one that required it to be a foot higher than what the manufacturer required. But overall, most places they've just said, whatever the manufacturer says, they let it go. And maybe it's because they don't feel it's an everyday occurrence. I don't know that. I mean, I can look more. I'll continue to look and see if there's anything, but we can always adjust that as we go.
Yeah,
in our
I
policy.
know the backflow is a legitimate concern. I've heard where it's happened. You don't hear it very often. It's not a very common thing to happen. And I just kind of feel that these systems are more prone to backflow than the problem we're addressing, which is very slight to start with. Not that we can do anything about it because that's being dictated, but it does kind of bother me.
Again, these devices have been required. I don't know exactly when the building code and the plumbing code required these backflow devices, but they've been a requirement for years.
Yeah.
It's just this plan is the way the state wants you now to monitor, test, and to record that it's the backflow devices are there and we're good working order.
You could use double check valves, but they don't want you to do that for some reason. I'm not sure why.
There's certain applications where you can't use a double check. You have to use an RPZ.
Yeah.
It's like the high hazard areas. your fire suppressions, especially fire suppressions that used antifreeze. So some devices, some applications are allowed to dual checks, double checks. We have dual checks in every one of our meter bits. So there's protection there automatically. But it's just when you get into these irrigation systems, fire suppression systems, and things like that is where the higher hazard requirements kick in. Thank you.
Open forum general discussion on GMB proposal for Alaska Avenue. Austin?
So this was actually on, I believe it was 2 meetings ago for discussion, and then it was also on the joint meeting that we held, well, I guess it was last month. And so Amory requested to bring it back up for discussion as the discussion is going back to council. And so what the plan is that the city, I believe, is moving forward with a streets project.
I mean, I can,
But
yeah, I mean, we're gonna be paving Alaska regardless of what you guys do. So if you are planning to put assets in there or work with Dot on the stormwater management, now could be the time. Otherwise, we're gonna pave Alaska because it's a city street.
And to that end, we have a proposal that was given to Austin and myself from GMB for the design. But if you are not going to upgrade the board's infrastructure in there, that would change the nature of the design. So we need to know, and this is on our workshop for tomorrow, we need to know before we enter into the proposal with GMB for the design, whether or not it's a board and city project or a city project.
And then just to add, the discussion is that you have the Cape Henlopen State Park, obviously, is they have came to us and said that there is interest there for sewer service. It's hasn't moved past like 30% design, initial discussions. There's no agreement, there's no nothing. There's interest there. And so one of the situations was Charlie had said that, and when you look at the long-term pipe sizing, that's one of the areas that theoretically should be upsized to a 10 should that project move forward. And so the question is, now that it's being paved, should we go in there and put the upsizing of pipe, replace it with PVC, add a couple manholes, and then obviously the water line is an existing cast iron main. So the question is whether or not you replace that with a PVC water main. And Mr. Quill's here. So he has a development that's going on. No idea what that would be, meaning if you were replacing it with a 6-inch line and for whatever reason there would be an 8-inch line that would be needed, that's another discussion that we have to have.
I'm back on the sewer line. The other thing is that it's, we discussed before, it's a terracotta line and it's in a low-lying area. So we know we're getting I&I through that line.
And that, so just so everybody can understand, there's a water line that goes back that feeds those couple houses and stops at the very end. And then right before it kind of gets to the marsh area, the sewer main, actually, that sewer main comes all the way down Cape Henlopen Drive and handles all the flow down Cape Henlopen Drive, makes a right there or a left if you're coming from Cape Henlopen Drive, like the State Park side, and runs across and behind all those properties all the way down to American Legion Road before it goes into Pump Station 8. So it's one of the major sewer lines back through there. It's actually Pump Station all the way down.
Terracotta running through wetlands.
Yes.
And your point is, Press?
No, the potential for infiltration is extremely high.
It's a big wet well, but I will also add in there that when you look at the point watch system, lift station 8's not on there. It's not necessarily where you can identify it as being a problem. You're not seeing it in necessarily that pump station because from kind of like the beach 2 area, Johnny Walker Beach, coming towards the pump station is all gravity fed. So it's force main all the way down to that point, drops into a manhole, and it's gravity fed all the way down to Pump Station 8.
I forget, do we have an estimate of the installation cost?
Charlie did.
Gotta be.
I want to say his cost.
I see his price, I mean, his design cost, but review. That's about 50, so I'm guessing it's about $1 million.
No, it was like 200, I think it was 250,000 for construction. 250 or 300,000 for construction.
So hearing more about this project, would this qualify for ARPA funds? That we could earmark that for ARPA?
I'm not quite sure,
Because it sounds like we're upgrading.
but it's not gonna be it wouldn't be entirely paid because the city would pay for their half and it wouldn't.
Right, it'll just be our portion.
I just don't know.
Or yeah, it might, with it being a joint project, I don't know.
Well, it would have to be separated out because
You
what
guys can
we're
pay for the
paying,
whole thing if
Yeah.
you want. No
Well-
problem there.
what we would be paying
If it
for,
helps you.
what we would be paying for would only be the water and sewer. You guys would be paying for streets, so it would have to be split out, itemized, so that
Yeah.
all the stuff we would be paying for. It's a discussion topic.
And then there's the issue of impact fees.
Only if the development would necessitate it is the existing BPW policy. So if for whatever reason you have a 6-inch line and the development needs an 8-inch line, there would be a capital contribution associated with it. But impact fees totally separate. Impact fees would not be associated or would not be issued until, for example, if Rick develops a property and a builder comes in and actually builds whatever they're doing, meaning if he just does the site development, whenever the building permit would be issued or requested, that's when you would have impact fees.
And it might be helpful just to kind of put these in different buckets as you kind of think about what the question that is currently in front of the board. So what my understanding is what is driving this discussion now is exactly what the mayor said at the outset, which is the city is paving the street.
Yeah, not in the next, I mean, maybe we speak to the timeline more, but in the future, we will be paving that street because it's an existing street. It's not in good repair and it needs to be improved. I mean, simple as that.
So then what that means is when you have new pavement going down, what you don't want to do is go in and tear up a recently paved street. So the question for the board now is you can do nothing. You can say, all right, city, Godspeed, and we'll watch the nice street and we'll go in, win it if we need to. You can do nothing. You can also alternatively say, all right, they're doing the paving now. We have some assets in there that need to be replaced in kind. Terracotta, a sewer, a water line. So just go in before the street gets done, go in and replace in kind your assets. And you could just do that. And that's an option. Another option is to say, well, since the street is being paved and we are proactively thinking about the ability and the potential need to upgrade the assets, what do we think needs to be done? Now, that inherently involves a discussion and a consideration of crystal ball. What do we think is likely to need? Is it a reasonable expenditure? Is that something we want to do right now? If you didn't do it right now, again, what you could do is you could say, we're not going to do anything and we're just going to upgrade our infrastructure or not do anything. And it is what it is. And then when that development comes online, you've got to go in and tear up the road and upgrade the infrastructure if that's the case. The BPW policy in that situation is that if the development needs an upgraded line, they're paying the costs of tearing up the road and upgrading the line. If that's what's needed for their development. So you could be proactive and say, if it is needed now, then we'll upgrade it now, but you're paying the cost of the upgrade. I think that's the conversation that Austin was throwing out there. But again, what the board could do is you could choose just to say, we're going to replace in kind, cover up the road, and when and if it's needed, we'll deal with it then. It really comes down to what bucket you think is most prudent.
And so just to, put a tooth comb on the bifurcation. So the sewer line, we obviously would want to upgrade to get rid of the terracotta. And if we sized it for the future Cape Henlopen requirements, we would inventory the cost and then hit them with the impact fees tied in. The water line, the 6-inch water line that's there is meeting our needs. So replacing the cast iron like for like with a 6-inch line to get rid of the old cast iron line would be all we would be obligated to, unless the developer wants to pay for the upgraded water line now. And to prevent additional costs down the line of ripping the road up and replacing that line. I mean,
That's the question.
Yeah, so there's two different pots.
The other thing I think to consider, which is part of their proposal, is the coordination with DelDOT around this. They're offering to do deal with the permits and the coordination with DelDOT around that pooling that happens there at Dairy Queen. That's part of this proposal. Is that correct? It says.
Yeah.
So DelDOT did a drainage analysis and determined what needs to happen to fix the issue on Cape Henlopen Drive near the Dairy Queen. But apparently they are not planning to construct anything unless it happens as part of this. I don't quite understand why, but so what we haven't figured out is how they're going to contribute to the cost, because if we include that as part of the project, then DelDOT should pay for it. But that's one of the things that still needs to be worked out. So, so really the question that the city needs to know so that we can get the design done is this just a street project? Is it street, working with DelDOT on stormwater and sewer and water, or some combination thereof? The time issue is more that what we don't want is to hold up the development because DelDOT is looking at the city's paving of the road as the entrance. So if we don't have that designed, then they can't get an entrance permit from DelDOT to be able to build.
And Anne-Marie, based on that, so is it fair to say the immediate question for the board really is that do nothing or do something?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
the question. So whether that something then also includes upgrading the infrastructure can be discussed and
That's a
get
good way to put it.
information later. But the question tonight is just, do you do nothing, or since the road's going to be open, do you go in and at the very least replace like with like?
Right.
Of your lines, your assets?
What's the reason that the street has to be paved now? Yeah, I thought there was a mention. that
DelDOT
it
won't
doesn't
allow, it won't authorize an entrance permit unless the street is upgraded. Because the
Okay.
access to the developed property will be through that street. And right now, that intersection doesn't meet a DelDOT standard.
Okay, so that's what's driving it.
Mhm.
It's the development requirement
Yes.
meeting DelDOT's permit holding, I guess.
Exactly.
Agency approval.
Yep.
But I remember on Savannah when that was the place that's making mead or whatever it is, and we upsized the pipe that they paid for in part, but we also made the pipe big enough to go across the street to the other person. And the idea is that when they decide to come on, that they would pay for their part of the pipe as well. Is that my understanding, Mike, of how it's worked in the past?
But in that case, Earl, you had a sewer district, and so you established a sewer district, and the board had carrying costs, and depending on when the other property owners came online, they paid an additive. I don't know if that's the right word, but they paid an additional fee based on when they came online because you were carrying that cost. But that was all related to creating a sewer district.
Sewer, okay.
Which
Okay.
no infrastructure was. There
Right.
was no infrastructure there, so when the infrastructure, This is
Got it. Okay.
existing infrastructure that you're basically being asked whether or not you want to contribute to the project, which is either replacing kind or
Well,
other.
but I just want to be clear. So so the question for the board really isn't the why the road is. I mean, the fact that we have in front of us is that the road is being opened, and that creates an opportunity for the board that if you wanted to upgrade your existing infrastructure, now's the time to do it without incurring additional cost. So I think the question for tonight is you've got this opportunity, that road is open. So do you go in and replace the terracotta, replace the water line? And if the answer is yes, then the answer this becomes a utility project for that. Whether you also upsize it is an additional question that doesn't have to be determined tonight.
That's a good way to put it.
I think we have to do it. That's an old and probably troublesome pipe.
Yeah, I'm with Press on that.
So the motion would be to, while the city is repaving the road, for us to replace our infrastructure, size to be determined at a later date.
Yeah, so I think the question from the city is this project also going to be a utility project? And the motion is yes, this would be a utility project, details to be determined.
So the details to be determined is the choice of replacing kind or something more.
Correct.
Or leave it alone. No, it's not,
No.
leave it alone is not there.
That's right.
We're saying, yes, we're gonna do something,
Correct.
get rid of the old stuff and put something in, whether it's in kind or futuristic.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
And then that would come down as if it's an ARPA eligible project, whether you want to use ARPA funds or anything like that.
Yeah, it would have to be separated.
Yeah.
And easily tracked.
So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Just for the sake of the record, to clarify, the motion is to approve it as a utility project, details to be determined.
Yes.
Okay, back in a second. Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you much. Open forum, general discussion on the wastewater treatment plant, long range.
Skip one.
Oh, did I?
Now crossing.
Oh,
This is,
it's a small one.
yeah, this is just providing a quick update. So when we had the original discussion about the canal crossing, we were looking at 3 different areas that GMB had determined as being feasible for a canal crossing. One was at essentially Queen Anne area. One was at essentially the Drawbridge Pump Station 4 area, and the other one was farther up Gills Neck Road, kind of around the bike trail and Robert Kennedy's piece of property. So we have been working at this with GMB. We've had a lot of discussions with DelDOT, with the property owner, and collectively, I can say it seems like we have a very good path forward to do all of the work itself would be contained, and the assets would be contained within the DelDOT right of way. And the reason that I'm coming back here is just providing you guys with an update, because I think the consensus was to look at a placement over in that general vicinity, and this is kind of the ideal place that we found. This has the least amount of disruption to the property owner itself. All we would be looking for is a construction easement. As it stands today, that construction easement would allow for us to put the recycler down, lay pipe if we need to lay pipe. We've already talked with DelDOT. We talked about kind of the access and the constraints in the area, any sort of diversion we would have to do with the bike path when we loop back around and tie in on Gills Neck Road. And then we also are going to kind of clean up that area as it stands right now, where the bike path comes out. It comes out at a very kind of awkward angle where there's a tree line. They've asked if we would be willing to just shift the bike path a little bit over so that the entrance would be more in open space. So you can clearly see coming in both directions and hopefully facilitate people not running right through the stop sign and out onto Gills Neck Road. It's a very minor shift. The asphalt company is going to be there already. So I don't think it's really that big of a deal, considering we're basically being allowed to utilize that right away. So that's the biggest update. I know Ben's online.
You solved that with a bridge.
Yeah. We didn't bring that up. We didn't bring up the bridge.
Next time you do.
Yeah. So I think that's the most up-to-date news on that project. Obviously, when we come out at the end of American Legion Road, the plan is to make a hard angled turn and come back out towards Savannah Road. And that would either be directional drilled or open cut.
So is there any action you're asking from the board at this
Nope,
point?
this is simply just updating you guys as we were kind of trying to identify the best location. The goal was to try and minimize as much of the private landowners area. And there's the space. The reason that it was so kind of just like screaming out at us that it can be used is because if you look at that area, the bike path actually shifts very hard over towards the property owner side, and there's kind of a drain there. And it's unused, like 50, 60 foot of space. And all we're trying to do is receive that pipe, turn back around and go right back out into Gills Neck Road. So I think it's going to work out pretty good. We'll update you guys along the way. Obviously, we have a lot of headway to go because you have the permitting associated with you have the Army Corps of Engineers and also some equities. So as we progress, we'll keep you updated, but it looks like it's a great opportunity for both us and DelDOT to work together on this.
Any questions?
Much needed. How
Yeah.
long do you think it's gonna take? What would you be your guess? Because that's pretty important, right?
I think the hardest issue is going to be the permitting. Right now, I believe the permitting is anywhere from 6 to 12 months through subaqueous. Obviously, we could probably push for something more. We're actually meeting tomorrow with the dredging folks just to make sure that they know that we have lines in the specific areas that they are. And we have signs made up too that we have to go out on the boat and put in.
Aqueous and the Corps?
I believe it's both.
Yeah.
But in this instance, we've already surveyed the private property side so that we
Yeah.
can get a construction easement drawn up for access. We've already met with him probably 2 or 3 times on site. Kind of talked around the idea of staging areas and stuff like that. Really thanked us for kind of eliminating the need for permanent easements on that property and utilizing the DelDOT area that kind of was utilized.
Great.
All right.
So we're probably a couple years out before that thing goes in.
Well, I'm hoping, well, just like we said on the common header project, if you go back a couple of months ago, it was 16 months for ductile iron, 16-inch water main. So the supply chain is kind of all sorts of right now. Hopefully there's no issues at any of the PVC pipe or HDP pipe places, because if there is, then ductile iron is going to get even worse. So I believe the plan is to use either fusible PVC or HDP, depending on how it looks pricing. I'm hopeful that we'll be starting to do work this time next year. Permitting all in place, because obviously it's going to be right around that bike path area. We want to make sure that it's safe. There'll be construction fencing. And then once they loop back around and they come back out, there's going to be an area that they have to cross that bike path as it turns and goes back towards the bridge. So there'll have to be temporary measures in place, whether they do that at night or whether they do that during the day. We'll kind of work that out as we get closer.
If subaqueous is the big issue, I mean, that's DENREC. So
Correct.
So we should pressure DENREC that the importance of the water main.
We can most certainly do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Open forum general discussion on the wastewater treatment plant. As I mentioned earlier, we met in mid-August with the county. We're gonna have more discussions and hopefully put together a draft document to share with the county. And there's been no major movements in the last month. The county has contracted with GHD to look at the outflow pipe and they are doing some test boring. So nothing really has moved that much, but I wanted to turn it over to Barbara to talk about the subcommittee she's chairing that was looking at alternative technologies.
Yes, So far, we've had 3 meetings, the August 21st and 29th, and more recently, September 12th. We also, many of us attended a webinar on September 19th or 14th, rather, put on by Aqua Narita, which was, it was their installation performance update webinar, where they talked about the 6 facilities that are operational in the US, a little bit about the 7 that are under contract and being built. We're looking at 2 different technologies. The Aqua Narita, which is an aerobic granular sludge processor, AGS, and sequencing batch reactors. And we have a trip planned to see a sequencing batch reactor in Berlin, Maryland. Jeff from Inframark asked to be invited to that, Austin, so. Okay.
Sharon, just me.
And so those are both going to be the end of October. We were thinking that, well, okay, the trip to Berlin. Aqua Aerobic is going to put together a preliminary design plan with budget and present that to us at a meeting, which is October 23rd.
I talked to them today, finalized all the rest of the questions they had.
Okay. Okay, and that's going to be at 2:00. The question is, you know, at our last meeting, we did have people from Inframark in attendance, and also Hans came. And Hans was very helpful with helping us with some county questions. And the group put together a whole list of questions, plus, you know, does Austin help with the design criteria? And we'll get those answered. There will be 3 people coming out to meet with us. And I wondered whether this should be a special board meeting, whether other board members might want to attend besides the 2 of us who are currently on the committee. And certainly we'll invite Sussex County to attend if they're interested. We're looking primarily, we reviewed option 1 and also option 2A, but option 1 seems to be more what we're looking at, which is hardening the existing plant. You know, these Aqua Narita reactors are 21 feet tall. That would certainly be well above the floodplain and even above most storm surge. We also learned from one of their webinars that their system is pretty resistant to salt water. They said their facility in Hong Kong has to be because they flush their toilets with seawater in Hong Kong. And they also said that there was a huge facility in Dublin that replaced one that was having problems with saltwater intrusion, saltwater. And they said this one is much more resilient in terms of saltwater recovery and saltwater not killing all the bugs. So it's interesting. Be interesting to see the budget numbers, preliminary budget numbers and that sort of thing. We also did a quick comparison of the Narita technology to the MBR and the biological nutrient removal system that Sussex County is talking about. And certainly the Narita technology numbers are much more favorable in terms of both CapEx and operation and maintenance costs. And that's kind of where we are now.
Any questions?
I guess I've got one, which kind of relates to what Barbara was saying. from a legal perspective, Mike, if more than two people wanted to be there from the board, is that something that's actually doable?
The big thing from what you're talking about is when you have a quorum of board members at a meeting discussing board business, that's a FOIA issue. But keep in mind, these are committees. So these are committees that are already publicly advertised that they are meeting and discussing board business. The committee can't vote on anything. They're just offering a recommendation to the board. So the short answer, Earls, is yes, I think you can be there. It would be properly noticed as a meeting of the committee. And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have to be a special board meeting. We could just let board members know that, you know, this is the date and time of the meeting and they're welcome to.
As far as FOIA is concerned, yes, because it has to be publicly advertised. So it's already going to be publicly advertised. It's going to be publicly noticed that there's this discussion. The only thing I would caution and why I actually would prefer that you not do that. So there's what does FOIA say and then what the preference is. From a FOIA perspective, you're covered. My concern would be when you get a quorum of board members discussing an item, even though the committee's not taking a vote, does it start to have this appearance of an action item, an action of the board? You know, you start getting into kind of blurring those lines. The idea is that the committee does its work, it presents a report, and then the board discusses it in a noticed board meeting to make a decision. I think you start to potentially blur those lines a little bit if you have a quorum discussing it before it gets to the dais on an action. So if you can avoid it, I mean, I think that if board members want to attend and listen, perfectly fine. I would just caution as a best practice against a quorum of board members actively engaging in the discussion.
What about them asking questions of the provider?
I feel like I'm back in law school with the test. It's at the end of the day, right. At the end of the day, I think for me, it's as a best practice. I think if you ask a question and you don't engage in a dialogue, again, you're going to be closer on the not having that appearance. The safer, most conservative best practice is you can observe and listen, but save the dialogue and questions for when it comes to the board. But again, I want to be clear. I don't think that there's anything that prohibits it. I just think as a best practice and for people understanding that the role of the committee is to come up with a recommendation that gets discussed here, I would just avoid having that discussion.
I have very serious concerns about the entire board going to a group setting like that from prior experiences. And you can talk about that offline, but
I mean, the short answer is at the end of the day, if board members are going to be present at a meeting discussing board business, it must be publicly noticed with the agenda identified. So if that's happening, you don't have the FOIA issue, the sunshine laws issue. The appearance of it, when is the decision being made? Has that, what's the discussion? Again, I think especially on an issue as sensitive and important as this, I would just recommend that if board members want to go, you listen, let the committee do its work. But then when it comes back to the board, you ask questions. And look, quite frankly, just as this agenda item had an update, if Barbara, you wanted to come back with updates to the board with some questions and the board can ask questions in this forum, you can certainly do that, kind of getting direction and refined direction to the committee. I think you can handle it that way. I would just best practice caution against having a board meeting of the committee before the board meeting.
Well, how about a site visit? That's
site visits are difficult
Yeah.
because again, you come into the public notice, right? So when you have a quorum at a site visit, if you're not opening it up to the general public to come to the site visit, that's where it gets tricky. And so I think best practice is again, not having a quorum of the board discussing board business. General rule outside of a publicly noticed meeting at a publicly noticed location.
and I think that's what I was more getting to is that the trip to Berlin or these other ones having a quorum of the board there, because you then get into the issue of it's difficult, even if you invite the public, that there aren't sub discussions going on. And
I think I know what you're talking about.
It's always the last thing I'll say on the FOIA and on the onboarding material, we draw this distinction. You have FOIA, you have the law, and then you have best practice. And I think as a public body, it's important that you be mindful of both when you're making these decisions.
Okay, so Tom, what do you recommend?
I think we can put this discussion off till the meeting is when?
The 23rd of October.
Something we actually have to decide in the
I just need 7 days to post it.
Let me try to parse this thing even finer if you don't mind, Mike. Barbara and I are obviously on she's leading it, and I'm part of her team as well. I personally think that for something like this, I think press is the smartest guy in the room when it comes to wastewater treatment. So I would be willing to back off that meeting and have press there if he would be willing to do that. Does that violate any code of value in there?
I don't know if you can see Mike's face or not.
So
He's very small. That's all I can say on my screen.
the challenge there, Earl, is that you're a member of the committee. Press is not. Let me suggest this because the specific question pertains to the site visit, correct?
Yes.
Right.
That's
So
what I'm concerned about.
let me suggest this. If we can put this on ice, I'll provide guidance to the committee in advance and well in advance of when it has to be noticed, and we'll point you in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that as a yes, by the way. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Another interesting thing that came up at the third meeting was Mike from Inframark mentioned that one of his clients in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, is now looking at the Aqua Narita system. And they're also considering an MBR system. They're kind of weighing one against the other. I guess space-wise, they're somewhat comparable, but he said he's not sure how they're going to come down on it, but.
Anything else on the wastewater treatment plant? All right, call to the public.
So I just want to say this is my last meeting that I'll attend as the city manager. Who knows, I may pop up another time for something else, but I wanted to say that it has been an absolute pleasure working certainly with Austin, but with all of you over the years. And I know there's a lot of really interesting and challenging things that the city and the board face. And I know for your part, you guys are in good hands with Austin and Robin, and certainly with Mike. But it's been a real pleasure to work with all of you. So thank you.
And Marie, I want to thank you personally also. Long before I ever was on the board, I was working on the city side, and I always appreciated your depth and your knowledge. And we may not have agreed on everything, but it was always very respectful, and I always sought out your opinion. So
Well, thank you.
I wish you the best in all your future endeavors.
Thank you.
I totally agree with that. I worked with you a lot, some tough times, and
Yep.
and you were always very professional and kept everything above board and looking out for the city's interest and but being fair to BPW at the same time. So
Well, and
thank
I think that's a testament to everybody because again, we all know we've had some challenges.
Right.
But I've never felt disrespected by any member of the board, and I hope that I've behaved the same way. So you know,
certainly
I
have.
think that one of the challenges in today's society is that people have a hard time disagreeing without being disagreeable, and you know, disagreement is healthy and it helps you get to a better result. And I think you know, everybody that I've worked with here has just been very very professional in that regard. So thank you.
We wish
And
you
that-
the
It's odd when I sent Anne Marie a message as she knows, and I said basically what you guys just all said, all three of you, which is we didn't always agree, but I always knew you had the best position in mind as it related to the city and BPW, and I want you done, which I appreciate having worked with you as well, and battling with you sometimes. I kind of like that.
You know, it helps to have those those tough conversations because
Yes, it absolutely does.
so thank you.
And Delaware is a very, very, very small place.
Yes, it is. So I'm sure I will see you all. So
Thank you.
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Rick?
Ditto, Anne Marie, thank you. And relate to what everybody says, but I wish you well in all your future endeavors. I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about last 24 hours. You know, a couple of things impacted me, and a couple hours ago, I came here today. I don't know the inner workings of the Lewes BPW. I don't do my homework on this at all. I didn't know there was a couple of meetings on Alaska Ave. I had no idea, but that's my fault. But I'm glad I came today, and I came. I suited up for battle.
So it's got Muhammad Ali shirt on.
I'm the least. And I talked to the gentleman I considered a couple hours ago as one of the finest men I ever met. And it made my project or the project, our joint project, Joe Johnson and Carla Johnson on 203 Savannah Road. I'll be candid with you. It really doesn't mean a damn thing in the big things in life. We worked on it for 7 years. And I can't change any of the past, but it was exasperating. And I was angry many times. And I just want to apologize to Robin because whatever a week and a half ago, we spoke and I really laid into him. And he did not deserve that vitriol. So I'm sorry. You know, I was last night I was watching MSNBC, whatever, and Alexander Butterfield sent a message to Cassidy Hutchison. And it basically was 50 years, 97. He's 97. I think she's 27. Substantial amount about integrity. That's what I read on it. You know, truth to power, stepping forward. And all I've ever asked, and when I said a couple months ago in a meeting is, I want to work with. This is my last project. So trust me, there's no other projects for Quill in this town. I want to run my B&B and that's it. But I have an obligation, the fiduciary responsibility to my business partner and his wife into this town. I don't know if I'm going to see it all the way through, but all I ever wanted was to cooperate, talk it out, and come up with an equitable, fair solution. And I thank you today for what you voted on. And I just look forward to, you know, putting this all behind us. And I wish you all well, because I don't agree with maybe some things we talked about with Anne Marie. There are a lot of things I don't agree with people. But in the big scheme of life if we can move the ball forward, the needle forward, that's the game, because Lewes is the best town in the state of Delaware, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Thanks, Rich.
Appreciate it.
Rick.
All right, motion to go into. Press, I'm sorry, Bill. You were sitting right in front there the entire time.
The stormwater management workshop that you talked about in this meeting, is that in response to the men who we all talked to during and after the joint meeting who had those flooding issues?
But others. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
You said it then, and
yeah.
there are other issues around town, but is it fair to say that this is kind of in response to that, what happened at that meeting?
I think it's probably a fair, I mean, we've been trying to address stormwater management with climate change and sea level rise. But that certainly was instigator for looking at things holistically.
Okay.
Because we can't go on looking at individual areas. It's not feasible.
The Donovan Smith project, is that still on schedule?
Yeah,
Okay.
still chucking.
Okay, and what's dewatering?
So dewatering is when you actually inject small diameter pipes into the ground and you draw the water table down so that you can actually get down there and not be fighting the water going into whatever ditch you're working in.
Okay.
And so you draw it up, you pump it out, and it basically, if your water table is at 6 feet, you can draw it down to 14 feet. So you place it, kind of periodically to kind of figure out where you want to draw it down at.
So that directly has to do with the project. then?
Yeah, the utilities.
Yeah, so if you think about, you go to the beach, you dig a hole and the water's there. If you put wells all around the outside of it, you suck the water table down, there's no water in the hole, so you can work in there.
And as far as you know, is the dredging still scheduled to start around October 9th?
I believe so.
Okay.
That's more of a, I think.
Yeah, it is, but you brought, somebody mentioned it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you just send me the logos for the water tower? If you
Yeah,
have- okay,
I think we could probably send them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
cool.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Now, motion to go to executive session.
And Earl, did you want to join by phone or by like a webcam?
Whatever is easiest for you guys.
So whether or not we leave this room and go upstairs or if we stay here.
Phone would be better.
Phone. So we'll give you a call.
Okay, thanks.
Who's making the motion?
Oh, yeah. Who's making a motion?
Who's making the motion? Do you second?
Oh, I asked for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.